Good morning, my name is Ben. I'm going to do an overview and a bit of a review of the relic, Leviathan dreadnought. I've got one I painted up about 2 years ago on the left, and one more recently on the right. It's a bit of a now and then comparison on painting abilities as such, as well as a stat overview. Also, the one on the left was a actual Forge World Leviathan dreadnought, whereas the one on the right was a fake. There is a video in my library of the fake, and turns out the quality of the fake was far higher than that of the actual product from Forge World. I'm sure this is a one-off, but yeah, some glaring production kind of standards that have not been met. Massive mold slips and stuff on that one, whereas there's nothing really to see on the fake as such. However, right, let's get into it. So, Relic Leviathan Dreadnought. Obviously, its stats will degrade according to how many wounds it's lost, but it will start out, however, on 14 wounds. Movement will be 8. It will go down to 5 inches and then 3 inches at the 7 wound mark. It will go down to 5, and then at the 3 wound mark it will go down to 3 inches. Now it starts off with a weapon skill and ballistic skill of a 2+. However, it will obviously degrade, as mentioned, at those points that we've already covered at 3+, and then at a 4+ point as well. Now, just to go over the rest of it, though, it will be strength 8, toughness 8, 14 wounds initially, 4 attacks, which will cover something about that in depth in a minute. Leadership 8 and a 2+ armor save. Just be aware though, this also comes up with a 4+ invulnerable save. It's a reinforced automatic barrier as such, so with 8th edition that's quite nice. All the advantages you can get, the better really. Now there's several weapons you can either fit it with, so you could have the Leviathan siege core itself. So this is my early attempt at painting, so it's not exactly great, but it'll do. It'll do for most things as such. Then we've got the Leviathan siege drill, which is just here. Again, I've fit out my Space Wolf one just purely as an unpleasant close combat opponent as such. They are both fit with heavy flamers, but the core, which I mentioned first of all, is obviously melee strength ×2, so that'll push you up to strength 16. AP -3 with 3 damage. You reroll wound rolls against infantry, which you don't really need, I don't think, for the rerolling of wounds against infantry. However, if you were going to have something to reroll, you'd want it to be something like the siege drill, which unfortunately there are no special rules for currently in 8th edition in the index for it. However, it's a strength strength ×2, AP -4 with 4 damage, which is really nice for taking on your heavier vehicles, which is exactly what you want to do. Personally, I would take this against a knight. If you take this up against a knight, it's going to have some serious problems. Just be aware though, if you do fit it with the close combat weapons, you also have a built-in melter within each one. You should see an exhaust in the centre. Now, that's particularly great because it makes up for your lack of shooting if you do this. But if you do take some of the ranged options as such, now as nice as they are, if you add range options, you will lose 1 attack per arm that is not a close combat weapon. So we've got the Graflux Bombard. I've chosen to put this up as a very much an anti-tank Leviathan Dreadnought. And that comes with an 18-inch range, which is D3, which is heavy. You've got strength 9, so that's going to push you over and make it so you're going to be winning most things on freeze. Even you'll be winning a warlord on 5s, which is really nice actually, compared to most other weapons that will be 6. AP -5, so don't expect an armor save apart from an invent and maybe a feel no pain if the opponent's got one. 2 damage. However, where it comes into its element is, if you're targeting a monster or a vehicle, which is what you're going to be using this for anyway, instead of the amount of damage you would have received, which would have been 2, it becomes 5 as such. So damage suffered from the successful attacks becomes 5 per hit. Now the per hit part is useful because when you read through it, it says for every 5 models in the target unit, add D3 to the number of attacks made by this weapon. So if you are unfortunate to be outnumbered and you hit a horde, like someone at my local gaming club wants to run I think he said 133, no, it was 166 grots, and yeah, if you did that, I'd have 33 D3 shots per Gravflux Bombard initially, and it's a bit flexible. It makes it a bit more of an option you're possibly going to take, in which case. However, there are other options which I'm less of a fan of, because I like my models to specialise in one thing or another and not be a jack of all trades. However, if you do have the Storm Cannon and Array, you're going to be looking at each one being a heavy 10 as such. And that's actually quite nice because it's a 24-inch heavy 10, strength 7, minus 2 AP, 2 damage. This is pretty good at taking on most things, to be honest. Especially your light to medium tanks. However, please excuse the fact that you have not been painted up yet. And you've got one of my preferred ones, which is a Cyclone Melter Lance, which is also strength 9, like the Gravflux Bombard. If it'll be strong enough for the magnets to take these, we'll find out. Okay, so it's a 18-inch heavy 2D3, strength 9, minus 4, and D6 damage. And obviously your Melter rule will still apply. Be aware though, if you give it this current loadout now, you'll go from that initial 4 attacks which I mentioned earlier on, you'll go all the way down to 2 attacks as such. But a very nice thing is, if you are going to take a Leviathan dreadnought, just be aware that instead of it exploding on a 6, it explodes on a 5. So I would really recommend either a very much an anti-tank option, depending on what you want. If you want to take on heavy tanks, if you want to take on a lighter version of a tank, feel free. But if you're wanting to get in there and you want to do some serious close combat damage, take on a knight. Ideal also, but shorter range shooting. The nice thing is though, that Leviathan dreadnought just there, with its 5 up to explode, you can re-roll that, and I assure you, it's not nice when it goes off, on the basis that instead of being your standard explosion, it's on a 5 or 6, this will explode within 9 inches, which is 3 more than normal at most. They will suffer D3 mortal wounds. Now, that's not great, but if you've been in combat with a Leviathan dreadnought, chances are you've taken a few wounds already. So you've probably got a few guys left, if any. And on top of that, if you've got a character that feels bold and brave and wants to go in and do something, they'll have a nasty day. I've had a lovely game where I've had one of these, and they've exploded right in the middle of the enemy's units. It's done more damage by exploding than it has physically managed to dish out. But just remember though, just because you've got these lovely weapons that I mentioned, the heavy flamers that are in there, which there's 2 of, there's 2d6 auto hits. That makes this thing in Overwatch particularly nice, especially if you were to couple it with something like your Storm Cannon Array, or even your Gravflux Bombards. It's still nice. However, if you do want to take on those anti-tanks, don't forget, although you've still got the Gravflux Bombards, you've also got your Cyclonic Melters, or Cyclonic Melter Lancers, which are really quite nice. Anyway, so that's those. This was painted about 2 years ago. It's not the greatest, but it's shown to be worth its weight in gold on the battlefield. However, this is the standard I was at 2 years ago, which is I'm happy with. I would happily field this, and I happily do field it. But I've noticed there's bits that I've missed and all sorts, like that's still down to the primer. I haven't done silver on there. I've just noticed the little kind of things where, I've started to pay more attention to detail. I've done things like flame patterns, which is dry brushing and backfilling with black to get this effect. And if you go wrong, to paint over it's in black. So it's a lot more forgiving. And this is my attempt 2 years later on. And it's not great, but it's at the standard where I can paint up to at the moment. And to be honest, I'm happy with them, and I would field them on a regular basis if I have a chance. This is my own custom chapter which I themed around the Legion of the Damned, whereas obviously a Space Wolves to the right. And as always, if you're going to have an Ultramarine on something, make sure they're dead or dying. So, yeah, nice little nod to the Ultramarines as such, on the basis that you're not going to survive. It's not when there's a Space Wolf or any other Astartes out there. Anyway, thank you very much. My name's Ben. Hopefully have a good day.